afternoon, everyone. This is Jody Patterson, Client Care Manager with Oasis Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Sage AP Automation webinar powered by Beanworks. Topic for today is how to guard against accounts payable fraud. As mentioned, I am Jody Patterson, Client Care Manager with Oasis Solutions. Your presenter today is going to be Tina San, who's an account executive with Beanworks, or Sage AP Automation as it is white labeled for our Sage customers. Tina is an account executive at Beanworks and has been with the company since 2018. She started out as a sales development representative who was responsible for qualifying leads and booking demos. She has since moved into the AE role, where she now hosts weekly webinars and our product demonstrations on the software to help our clients develop cases for AP automation and to improve their business processes. A little bit about Oasis for those of attendees who are not familiar with us. Most of you are our current customers, but we do have some guests today. Oasis Solutions was established as a Sage partner back in 1991. So we've been in business for 29 plus years. We have been a best places to work in Louisville and Kentucky for the past 2 or 3 years, as well as recipient of the Incredible Award several years running, as well as Bob Scott's 2019 Top Bar Award. We have over 700 clients in 36 states, and most of our customers appreciate the fact that at Oasis, we focus on people and our processes, because we do believe that who you buy from in the marketplace is more important than what you buy. Speaking to who we are, our staff is made up of CPAs, MBAs, former CFOs, controllers, and software developers. Therefore, we know your business from your side of the table as well as ours. We're not just software people. So our project managers have over 350 years of combined experience to help you with your business. A little housekeeping for the webinar today. We do want you to ask questions. We may or may not have time to cover them all at the end of the demonstration today, but we will log the questions and respond via email following the webinar separately if necessary. We are also recording the presentation today, and the slide deck and presentation will be sent out after the webinar. So on to, do put your questions into the Q&A window at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So moving on, Tina San, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jody. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for attending today. Today, what we'll be covering during the webinar is the impact of fraud. We'll be going over some fraud examples, types of AP fraud, looking at what the research says, and I'll be suggesting some steps to prevent fraud in AP, and then we'll jump into the product demo itself. Now, so what is the impact of fraud in today's modern economy, and is it really something we need to worry about? Well, research by the Association of Financial Professionals found that 82% of organizations in North America were victims of attempted or actual payments fraud, and that was a 20% increase from 2014. AP fraud is one of the most common types of fraud and is also one of the easiest to perpetrate, since the majority of the money leaving a company legitimately goes through the AP department. Companies without robust systems for verifying invoices are most likely to fall prey to AP fraud. Repercussions can range from financial losses and compromised data to a fragile customer base and long-term reputational damage for the brand. The same year, more than $7 billion in losses were recorded in over 2,500 cases worldwide across 23 industries in businesses of all sizes, and half of them were attributed to an internal control weakness. The true global cost of fraud is definitely higher, considering it does not factor in post-fraud costs, such as business closures, crisis management and communication, media management, and reputational risk, which can be severe and, again, expensive. In 2017, McEwen University in Edmonton was blindsided by a multi-million-dollar fraud. How did this happen? Well, it was a simple phishing email. The university was in the middle of a massive construction project, and an AP employee had received an email that looked like it was from one of the construction firms asking the university to update bank account details. So payments went through to the new fraudulent account, and until the actual construction company asked why they hadn't received payment yet was when the fraud was detected. With the increased sophistication of criminals and a lack of adoption of fraud prevention technologies, it's making it harder for organizations and indeed individuals to identify a scam. So how and where does AP fraud take place? Well, here are some examples of the most common types of fraud. So phishing scams, just as we've discussed in the McEwen case there, duplicate payments, or even duplicate invoices is one of the top AP-related problems for companies. Vendors can be paid more than once due to the receiving of the same invoice in different formats or due to employee error. Unapproved vendors leads to false payments to those who should not be receiving payment. An employee can easily set up a fictitious or unauthorized vendor account and submit invoices or process payments for non-existent or fraudulent goods and services. So this also goes in hand with false billing, fraudulent payments, and another type of fraud is tampering with financial reporting, where an employee may change financial data after payments are completed. Now, let's take a deeper look at some findings by a study from Level Research, which we partnered with. According to the study, small to medium-sized enterprises are the most likely to accept paper invoices, much more than both larger organizations and the total average. These organizations fall into a similar pattern with invoice data entry, mostly inputting data manually. And 86% of these organizations employ manual data entry in their AP process. So that's a lot of time spent on just keying in invoices one by one, making sure all the fields are filled out, hand keying them into a computer and then to your financial system. So the hard cost of AP processes, both average cost per invoice and percentage of discounts uncaptured, drastically decrease as automation maturity increases. When accounts payable is operating manually or an organization lacks fraud prevention measures, there are many processes and control gaps in which fraud can take place. Now, let's take a look at some of the most pressing AP challenges. The research identified that the top pain points related to AP included duplicate invoices and or payments. We've got invoice to payment matching. So followed by many others that pertain to fraud and risk management. So AP fraud impacts companies and their customers, and they do not discriminate between company sizes. So there's a good chance that many of you here have experienced in a type of AP fraud of more than one kind. Now, considering these challenges, let's take a look now at AP automation. Once organizations adopt an AP automation solution, they greatly improve their risk management capabilities through improved visibility, tracking, and controlling invoice and payment processes. We can all agree that AP doesn't have to be the most chaotic department in your business. And by opting for automation, increasing visibility, and using solid digital systems, you can significantly improve your entire accounts payable department. This makes it easy to see exactly where those vital funds are going and how they're being processed and managed. Accounts payable invoice matching is the process of matching vendor invoices, purchase orders, and perhaps a product receipt information. And matching each of these documents prevent you from paying for fraudulent invoices. This also ensures that you will only pay for what you get delivered. Sage AP automation uses a combination of smart coding and human auditors to intelligently code invoices along with automatic PO to invoice matching for a fast AP process. So how do you combat duplicate invoices and payments? Well, time-consuming tasks like cross-checking every item on an invoice can be assigned to an automated tool such as Sage AP Automation. We use a two-way sync with your existing accounting software so you can verify which invoices have been paid. Our software identifies duplicate invoices and helps flag duplicate payments. With this feature, your accounting teams can reduce spreadsheets and duplicate data entry by purchase requisitions stored directly in Sage AP Automation and automating the entire approval process in one place. So overall, how do you mitigate fraud? Well, let's take this example. Mark Cuban, the entrepreneur owner of the Mavericks and a shark on Shark Tank, was recently speaking about AP fraud that took place in his first company, Micro Solutions. So in this company, checks were given to a receptionist to pay suppliers, but the receptionist forged those checks to pay herself, liquidating the company's bank account of all but $2,000. This lesson, Mark Cuban ultimately said, helped him get more serious about his business ventures early on. Now, your company may already have multiple approval channels and controls installed for the AP process. With high invoice volumes, this manual process can become cumbersome for the accounting team to handle. AP automation gives your AP team structure, improved trackability, and defined reporting into your company's accounting system. Our software provides a defined end-to-end visibility, helping accounting teams to focus on high-value tasks and view AP-related data on a real-time basis. While AP fraud is a risk that comes with conducting a business, identifying the signs and implementing controls can help businesses detect and limit their risk. Accounting professionals are an integral part of this process, and equipping your accounting team with the right skills, knowledge, and tools to recognize the warnings and signs can go a long way in maximizing a business's cash flow, increasing transparency, and streamlining the AP process. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the product itself to show you exactly what we're talking about here and how we can help you de-risk your entire process. So I'll move on over to the demo portion now. And before jumping into the nitty-gritty details of each of the modules, I'll quickly go over the user experience and user-based permissions, so it's easier for you to follow along as we go. Now you'll see on the left-hand side here, we've got three main modules: purchase orders, invoices, and payments. In the middle of the screen here is the workspace. At the top of the page, we've got the workflow, which flows from left to right or from top to bottom. And on the left-hand side over here, you'll see we've got the organizational structure. So in my example, I've got Green Bean Country Club as a parent company. Green Bean Co. is one of my legal entities. Within that entity, I've also broken it down by department. And you'll notice even further segmentation, entities, and so on. So if you do have multiple companies that you're working out of, we can have it all displayed here on the left-hand side for you to easily toggle between the different companies. Our system also allows for unlimited user access. And what that means is you can really define on a per user basis what each individual can see, what they can do, and have access to in the software. For example, let's take myself, for instance. I'm in the sales department here, and I don't necessarily need to see the activity from the other departments. So you define that on the user-based permissions. And when I would log in, I would only see the activity that pertains to me in sales. The same type of customization applies to the top, where if you're going to have users come in and they're only going to be in charge of approving invoices or approving payments, we can actually hide the other tabs. So when those users log in, they'll just see the approvals tab and the work that they need to complete. Now you'll notice here as I quickly just jump between the other modules that everything in terms of the layout stays exactly the same. The only thing that really changed now was the color of the module. So we've designed the system this way to make training fast and easy. So once you've learned one of our modules, you'll have a really good understanding of how the rest of the system works. So that was a brief overview of the user experience. Now let's go ahead and get started in the purchase order module. And I do want to note here that our purchase order module is completely optional. So if purchase orders is not a part of your workflow at the moment, don't worry, you are not forced to use this module at all. You can completely skip this. And another thing is as well, if you currently use Sage's purchase order module, we'll also be able to import that existing data from Sage's PO module and have that flow directly to the committed tab. So we'll touch that on that as we go along. But for now, let's start at the top here at the create level, where you can actually have users come in here and create purchase orders directly out of our system. So what they do is they'll log in, select the entity that it's intended for, fill out the vendor information, and you'll see that all of these lists here that we've got, so your vendor list, your account list, and so forth, they will be pulled directly from your Sage financial system. So however it's set up there is what you'll see here in the system. And that also brings me back to a point where, Sage is going to be your source of truth. So you wouldn't be able to create, none of your users will be able to create a purchase requisition if the vendor does not already exist within Sage. So that's a point of control that we've designed on purpose. Now let's click on one of these vendors here. I'll fill up my account list. And again, this will be mirrored from Sage. With the wildcard search, I can just type in a word from the string, for example, quickly locate the account, fill out the details, the date, and so forth. And now what you could do is you could either save this purchase requisition, and if you save it, it'll then appear in your in progress queue to come back and work on it. Or if you fill out the details and it is good to go ahead now and submit it for approval. By submitting it for approval, this will trigger an automated email to the individuals that you'll define in your approval channels. What they'll do is they'll come into the system here at the approvals level, and they can either batch approve or reject all purchase orders, or jump into it, look at a specific one, and approve or reject from this screen. Now, if you are going to reject anything in our system, you will be required to leave a comment. And you'll also notice that we will log all of these comments on the purchase order, and it'll essentially be kicked back to the individual that submitted it for approval. Once purchase orders have been approved, they'll come on over to the Committed tab. So the Committed tab will store all of your open purchase orders. And as our system automatically matches the purchase order and invoice together, you'll be able to see how much has already been drawn, the remaining and total amounts, and so forth. And until they're fully matched is when they'll move on over to the Close tab. So the Close tab here will store all of the information in regards to the purchase orders that have gone through our system. And if you ever need to run any reports or look for specific information, you'll notice you have the ability to create custom filters here based on any type of criteria. And in terms of the reporting that we support, you can either create a CSV or a PDF. So that wraps up the purchase order module. I'll now go ahead and continue in the invoice module. So the invoice module is really the bread and butter of our software. And again, POs in our in the system here are not required, but I'll be walking you through the entire process anyway. So here at the create of invoices, this is how you'll get paper-based invoices into the system. So if you're still receiving invoices by mail, if they're being dropped off in person, all you've got to do is batch scan those invoices, whether you have a stack of 10 pages or 20 pages. Click upload, drag and drop the file here, and you'll notice that we've created the digital copy in the system for you. To quickly separate these pages, it's a click of a button. And if you have any multi-paged invoices, all you have to do is drag and drop to organize. like so. So you'll see I've got one invoice with one page, another with 2, 3, and so on. Click Save, Create Invoices, and all of these will then push on over to the next step, which is in progress. Now, if you're currently receiving invoices electronically, we'll be setting you up with a Sage AP automation email address, which you could start sharing to your vendors. Or if you currently have an existing inbox that you're already using to accept invoices, we can help you set up some auto forwarding rules. So your current inbox forwards over to the inbox that we'll set you up with. And essentially, we'll be able to pull in all of those electronic copies directly into the system, and they'll appear in progress here. So as long as you've scanned all of those pages or you've forwarded over to our inbox that we'll set you up with by the end of your business day, as long as you do so by the end of your day, you'll find it appear here in progress by the next morning with some of the information already captured for you. Now let's jump into an example. What we automatically capture for you includes the header information, so the vendor, the date, the due date, as well as the subtotals, totals, and taxes. So all that's left for you to complete will be the line item details, but there are a few different ways we can help you with this as well. The first way, as I mentioned, our system will help identify if there has been a purchase order to match with the invoice, in which case you'll see one here. And you can actually split the screen to view the PO and invoice side by side. Now, to complete the coding for the invoice, you've just got to click into PO adoption here, and we'll be able to pull off the lines that were already coded from the PO and apply it here on the invoice level. So then the coding is done. It is now ready to be submitted for approval. Now, if you're not using purchase orders, again, that's completely fine. We do also have another feature called Smart Code. And Smart Code works the best when you've got invoices that will be typically coded the same way. For instance, utility bills. Every time you get a bill from a certain vendor, you know that you'll be coding it usually to the exact same account. So if that's the case, click Smart Code, and our system will automatically populate the details for you just based on the last way you've coded it. And then it's done. Go ahead and submit it for approval. Last and final way is if PO adoption and Smart Code do not apply, again, these lists will be populated from Sage, making it super easy for you to locate, code, and submit for approval. So similar to the approvals page in the purchase order module, your users can come here to either batch approve or reject the invoices here, or of course, jump into it. But since we're talking about approvals on this level, let's jump into the settings, and I'll talk you through how we can actually help you set up the approval logic. So you can set up different channels for each of the modules. And you'll notice right now that legal entity implies global rules, which just means that these approval channels will apply to all of my companies. But of course, you can have a specific channel for each company. And let's just take a look at this one here. So this particular channel is saying that any invoice that I'm coding to this specific account will be routed to this individual for approval. Now, if I edit this one, you'll notice that you can specify any type of dollar range if you wanted to, whether that's any invoice above $1,000, between a certain amount or below. You'll be able to pull in any type of standard list as well, whether you'd like to specify by vendor. Let's just play with this a little, and I'll add some more criteria here. So I've added a dollar rule. I've added my vendor list, and I can select which ones I'd like to apply here. So now we've got a little bit more of a detailed rule where it's saying any invoice that fits all three of these criteria will then be routed to Beansprout. So you'll see that you can create, very complex rules, whether it's being defined by just a dollar amount, just the account that it's coded to, the vendor, or however it is, perhaps it's a department. In terms of the users, We'll click into here. And right now, I just have all of these invoices being routed to Bean, but I can pull in, let's pull in a few more people here as well. And again, just drag and drop to organize. So now what the invoice approval is saying is it'll first have to be routed to Bean for approval. Once Bean completes it, it'll then be routed to Jack. Once Jack is done, it's routed then to Jill. So 3 separate layers of approval, and all 3 need to complete it. Our system also allows for the OR logic, meaning that I can actually group users together. Let's say I put them all in one group. So the 3 of them, they'll each receive the notification that an invoice is ready to approve, but only one within the group is required to actually approve it. So whoever sees it first approves it, it is then complete. So this works handy if you've got several, let's say several managers who have the same level of signing authority. Perhaps not all of them need to approve, maybe just one. So however you'd like to organize it, will definitely be able to accommodate all of your approval channels. Now let's jump back into the invoice module itself, and we'll continue here at the export tab. So once all invoices have been approved, you'll see them here now at export. And before actually exporting and syncing this data back out into Sage, this is where you can do one final look to make sure that everything is absolutely correct, it is coded to where it should be, and so on. Once you decided it's good to go, select them all, go to Actions here, Export Data, and again, all of this information will sync on over to Sage, and it'll appear as if you've manually coded it yourself. Once you've exported it, they'll essentially disappear from that screen, but no worries, they'll appear here now and be available for you in the Archived tab. So the Archived will essentially be your online filing cabinet now. We'll store all of your information here for at least 7 years, and if you ever have to go through audits, everything will be completely traceable. I'll run your report actually to show you what it looks like and what is displayed on a report itself. But again, just to highlight that you can create custom filters, and you can pull in any type of criteria you'd like to define it and essentially highlight the bubble, and our system will find invoices that match this criteria. But for the sake of this demo, let's just run a report on all of these invoices I've already got archived, and let's do a PDF. So it just takes a few seconds to download onto my computer here. And let's open it up. So on the first page, you'll always get a high-level summary of all of the invoices you've just ran. And let's say I wanted to look at this invoice in particular, invoice number 12. You don't actually have to scroll all the way down, although you can. What you can do is just hover over the number, click on it, and it takes you directly to the page within the report. Now you'll see the invoice image itself, header information, the line item details, and you'll also see the entire approval history or audit trail. So you can see who approved it, on which date, if they left any comments during this as well. So we've definitely had clients run these reports and just email it off to their auditors, or we've also had clients give their auditors read-only access to come into the software to do their own searching and their own reporting. So that wraps up the invoice module. Now let's continue on to the last and final piece, which is our payments module. And similar to the purchase order module, payments is also optional. And I do want to highlight, if you would like to continue making your payments in-house, that is completely fine. As I mentioned during the slide deck, we do actually have a bilateral, so a two-way sync with your financial system. So in the case where you would like to, let's say, issue a check in-house, you can completely do so. And once you've completed that payment within Sage, you'll actually see that we'll sync the data over into Sage AP automation as well. So in this case, you'll see some of these invoices I've got here have these little cash icons beside them. If you click on it, it'll reference the, the checking number, the reference number, the total amount, and so forth of however you completed it outside of our system. So that's one thing to note. Otherwise, if you would like to make payments with us, let's walk through that workflow, and it starts here at the create. So at the create level here, we'll group all of your invoices based on vendor for you. You've got an age payables list here to start selecting which invoices are ready to be created for payment. Once you've selected them, click Create Payments, and those ones will move on over to the In Progress tab. Here at the In Progress, this is where you'll define how you'd like to pay this invoice. So we directly integrate with all US banks, and the payment methods that we can accommodate include check, which means that we'll actually cut the check for you and mail the check for you. We can also accommodate ACH transactions. We've got a digital check, and we also have a virtual credit card program. Now, if I jump into this one, this is where you define, the payment method as well as which bank you'd like to pay out of. If you've got several different bank accounts, we can definitely accommodate that as well. Once the details are defined, go ahead now and submit it for approval. And of course, your approvals for payments could be completely different from the invoice portion, of course. And this page looks exactly the same as we've seen, where it makes it super easy for you to jump in to view the details of what you're approving. Once payments have been approved, they'll move on over here to the Releases tab. Now, if you're doing a weekly or a bi-weekly check run, think of the Releases tab as doing exactly the same thing, where you can come into the system here, you'll have your approved payments ready to go for the week. You can then select them all and click Release Payments. And that's when you're telling us here at Sage AP Automation that you're ready for us to actually mail out those checks for you. Once completed, that data now will be available here at the Paid level. So the Paid tab is going to act exactly the same as the Invoice Export tab, where you'll now be able to export this data out into Sage, into your financial system. And then the last two tabs here are pretty straightforward. The Archive tab, you'll get, of course, all the information and history regarding that payment. And the Report allows you for further reporting functionality in this module alone. So that wraps up the demo portion of this presentation. Hopefully that was informative and helps you think about how this system and having your process automated can help you streamline your process as well as de-risk your chances of being frauded. So if I jump back now into the demo, and onto Jody.
Hi, thank you so much, Tina. We now have a few minutes for questions and answers. If you can stay with us, I just have a couple that have come through so far. Any other questions, please go ahead and enter them into the questions window while we address these. First question, how many users can they have in the system?
Oh, great question. So in terms of users, you can have unlimited amount of users. We will not charge you based on the number of people you'd like to have in the system.
Great. Next question, and this is a good one. What happens if they get an invoice from a new vendor? I think they are asking if it comes into AP Automation, but it has not yet been set up in Sage.
Yep, great question. Yeah, so when that's the case, again, Sage will be your source of truth. So if that vendor is new and it doesn't exist within Sage yet, you'll have to go into Sage, update and add that vendor, and that information will then sync on over to our system where you'll then be able to code that invoice to that new vendor.
Great. That's another cross-check for that fraud. Appreciate that. Another question. What if we want to cut checks in-house?
Yep, exactly. So as described earlier, you definitely can. The interesting thing about payments, our payments module, is it's very flexible, where you can make some payments with us or you can make, some with us, some in-house. You can do all with us, all in-house. It's really, really flexible. As you saw earlier, you'll have the data, whether it was done in our system or not, all the data will be available to you with the bilateral sync that we do have.
Okay, and one more question regarding payments. What is a virtual credit card?
Yeah, great. So a virtual credit card, the way I like to describe it is think of like a Starbucks gift card. So with the virtual credit card, every time you release this payment, your vendor will receive a unique 16-digit card with the unique CVV number and so forth that they'll have to manually input to accept that exact amount that you've funded them. So every time you release a VCC transaction, the card number will be completely unique, completely new each and every time. And the benefit of using this virtual credit card with us, is that you can actually earn up to 1.1% cash back.
Great. And I would assume that also using a virtual credit card helps reduce credit card fraud.
Exactly, you're right.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at this time. So if you want to enter any additional questions into the Q&A box, we will address those via email following up after the webinar. My contact information as well as Tina's contact information is on the screen. If you want more information on AP automation for your particular business, feel free to contact me at jody@oasisky.com or call into Oasis at 502-429-6902. My direct extension is 225. I look forward to speaking with all of you, and thanks again, Tina. We appreciate the webinar today.
Awesome, thank you so much. That was great.
Have a good afternoon.
All right, bye now.
Bye.